Here on the Colour of Country Life, Flow FM, we're here speaking with Cheryl Kalish-Gordon from Rabobank. Good to have you back with us, Cheryl.
Good to be here, Ricky.
Now, look, input costs are a big talking point. We'll get to that a bit later on. But first of all, how are we seeing things travel for our farmers? The crop's well and truly off by now. You would certainly hope so when it comes to barley and wheat.
Yeah, look, it's off, but the moving of it to port is still creating an ongoing job and a challenging job in many parts of Australia in terms of getting it to port. So the crop's off, but farmers are still really busy.
Yeah, and what are we seeing on the pricing front, I guess, in light of that? I guess, is a lot of it just sort of hanging around in storages now and farmers are able to hang on to it?
Yeah, look, the price outlook is for prices to remain firm. So we do have an open window for that sales program. Nonetheless, farmers are interested in keeping the movement of grain to port going because, they're already thinking about the next planting and conditions in lots of areas are looking good. So, the expectation of having a decent volume again at the end of this year does mean that farmers need to keep it moving and challenging, constrained availability of truck transport. Some issues in some regions, though not all on rail, does mean that it's not straightforward.
Yeah, and I guess that does bring us to one of those challenges of input costs when it comes to diesel, but also fertilisers as well. It doesn't have a direct effect on the pricing front for the grain, I guess, but it certainly affects how you plan for next season.
Absolutely, and that's what we're really hoping everyone is doing, is really taking these high prices and estimates for them to stay high into their budgeting for next season. So we expect that will, reduce margins. These higher, for example, fertiliser prices reduced margins, notwithstanding that high prices will stay around, but still pay off. Those inputs will still pay off at this stage from the analysis we've done.
Yeah, and we've touched base regularly about this Russia-Ukraine crisis and the way that's feeding, sadly, into what it means for farmers in a positive sense on the pricing front. Not really seeing that conflict coming to an end, so I guess, are we seeing Australian grain starting to get priced into those international sort of even futures markets?
Oh, look, everybody is looking to Australia for grain supply to fill in the gap that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, it's across the grains and so strong demand here. We continue to trade at a negative basis on most grains into those global markets, but still good values and still, achieving, meaning there's a good year for Australian farmers, notwithstanding that it is on the back of a really sad situation in Ukraine.
Yeah, now look, on the canola front, what are we seeing in terms of movements there?
Oh, look, we're pushing against record pricing in many port zones again at the moment. And, that's really because there's a lot of fundamentals sitting behind strength in this market. If we look at the soybean market, the US is still dry. There's concerns about the supply that's coming out of South America. Ukraine, the world's largest sunflower oil exporter, of course, that supply is unavailable and concerns about the next planting. And of course, crude oil prices are remaining strong with crude oil still sitting at around $100 a barrel. So, there's a lot of supportive factors sitting behind canola. And, if you ever wanted to see how strong the demand for Australian canola is that we've seen the first bulk shipment of Australian canola being exported to the US over the last fortnight. Typically the US, gets the bulk of their requirements from Canada. There's not much left in Canada, and if you can make it work that it's coming from Australia, that shows the strength of that demand in that market.
Well, this is going on right now, what farmers are planting or soon, but ABARES last year, I think, showed there was a massive lean into canola plantings compared to other, winter crops. I guess on the back of that, we might see an even heavier canola planting this year.
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of farmers that would like to expand their planted hectares of canola this year. So we do expect a strong planting, particularly in areas that have got early, good soil profile, moisture profiles. Have heard of some dry planting, such as the desire to get canola into their programs. But we're also hearing, that there's a shortage of seed. So that might curtail some plans. And also, of course, the higher costs of production sometimes that go along with planting canola, as well as if you plant it, back to back in the same paddock. So, a few concerns there, but on balance, would expect to be pushing on those hectares from last year.
Well, Cheryl, looks like we might see more literal fields of gold in Australian winter cropping this coming spring. Thanks very much for joining us again from Rabobank. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ricky.